Start
This
recording.
conference will now be recorded.
Okay, Therese, ready for you.
Great, thanks, Marvel, and welcome everybody. Today I'm going to talk about the Kano model and NPS. As I was joined, Norval asked, "Is it pronounced Kano or Kano, or how is that pronounced?" And I will tell you, I alternate on that, so I'm probably not the best authority on pronunciation. So you'll have to bear with me as I alternate how I actually pronounce things. But yeah, I'm going to talk about NPS as well as the Kano model, and really focus on how you can use survey feedback, whether it's an NPS survey or other survey mechanism, to understand your customer needs better within that model. So let me, hang on a moment, my slide is not progressing. There we go. So the Kano model itself was created originally by, again, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but Dr. Noriaki Kano in the 1980s. And it really is a theory around product development, customer satisfaction. So there's two dimensions. There's the horizontal axis, which is really around achievement. And if you look at that, things that are not implemented at all are on the far left, and on the far right, things that are fully implemented. And then filling out the model from top to down, the vertical axis. If a customer is totally dissatisfied, that's kind of at the bottom of the model, and total satisfaction is at the top. And so that is the structure of the model itself. And how this fills in across, and I've actually taken this model out of ASQ itself, but there's three different categories or levels of customer expectations. Basically, if we are living in the model where we're looking at the things that are below the full, below the satisfaction line here, and on the fully implemented side, we might be meeting the expected quality, but we're never going to move up that scale of satisfaction. So expected needs, must-haves, otherwise known as dissatisfiers, are down here, which is just expected quality. So if I'm buying a car, I need a steering wheel. If a car does not have a steering wheel, I will be very dissatisfied. Having a steering wheel will never make me more satisfied. Now, having a heated steering wheel, that's a whole other thing. But just the basic expected need, expected quality is down here. So the concept there, again, is that these are things that are necessary. Sometimes they're called hygiene needs. That's another synonym here. These are things that you must have or your customers will be dissatisfied. Then there's the normal needs, the things that live in the middle, the wants, the satisfiers, the expressed needs. So these are things that a customer wants to have when they go looking for whatever they're purchasing from you. And if you do them very well, customers will be more satisfied. If you don't do them at all, they'll be dissatisfied. So there's a range of normal quality. And then there's the exciting quality, or the delighters. These things are the things that are kind of the unexpressed needs, or the things we have to search for a little bit more, the things that come out and excite our customers and really wow them. So if you don't do these, you may not have really dissatisfaction, but the more you do them, the more the customers will be satisfied. And on the NPS scale, when we get to that, the more they may be loyal to you. So again, there's the satisfaction axis and the achievement axis. And as you move across the axis, things that you must have will always make you, will only make you dissatisfied if you don't have them. And things that are the exciters, the delighters, will really only make you more satisfied, and then with the normal quality in the middle. And then you see this arrow here pointing downwards that says time. What that's indicating, this is really one of the cruxes of the model, is that over time, things that begin as exciting quality, attractive needs, delighters, will become normal quality, and then eventually will become must-haves or dissatisfiers. And in today's world, that progression over time happens very, very quickly. So I like to think about when I purchased my car that I have now for a couple of years. When I bought it, I was very excited that it had a heated steering wheel and a sunroof and things like that, things that I didn't have in previous cars. So those are exciting to me. If I go buy another car a year or two from now, I'll kind of now expect those things. And really, I'll expect even more things like, easy access to Wi-Fi and things like that I didn't even think about in my last car, because those aren't standard. So think about things, especially if you're in a technology space, and as it moves over time, the things that are exciting become normal and then become really only dissatisfiers, and that's something you have to keep a very close eye on. So that's the Kano model itself, or Kano model. And then I'll look quickly at NPS. So NPS, or Net Promoter Score, also always known as Net Promoter System, really came about around 2006 with a book called The Ultimate Question from Fred Reichelt. There's actually a second book, The Ultimate Question 2.0, came out a few years later. And it's widely embraced by many companies. The company I work for, LexisNexis, uses the Net Promoter Score along with several other satisfaction and survey measurements. But really, it's a leading metric for customer loyalty. And the purpose is to really predict revenue performance so that it can be a leading metric for revenue performance. The way it works is this is really a survey, and you ask your customers the question, how likely are you to recommend whatever your product is to your colleague, associate, or friend? The scale is actually an 11-point scale. It goes from 0 to 10. The 0 is not at all likely. The 10 is very likely. And then you group your respondents into 3 categories based on their response. So 0 to 6 are detractors. Detractors are customers who will potentially actively go out and say negative things about you in the marketplace. Maybe they'll put something in social media that's negative, but they'll actually tell people not to buy, right? The 7s and 8s are your passives. They may actually be satisfied. Where they are at risk of churn and of leaving you would be things like someone else coming around with a delighter, or maybe a cost difference. They may be completely content with what they have. They're not necessarily complaining, but they're also not out really singing your praises. They're just passive. And then the 9s and 10s are your promoters. So those are the ones who are really going out and saying positive things about your product, about your company, and pushing other people, their friends, their colleagues, etc., to use your product. And really, if you're a company that uses NPS, if you look at that compared to the lifetime value of your customers, or to your retention, churn rate, repurchase rates, maybe wallet share, those different comparisons, you should see that the promoters are really a more valuable piece of your customer pie than your detractors, basically. So when we look at it at LexisNexis, for instance, one of our segments that we support within our customer base is our small law customers. These are solo attorneys out in law firms of just 1 or 2, just themselves, or maybe have a partner, who are using our research products. And we've seen the promoters among that customer base are less likely to leave us for our major competitor. They're less likely to really have a lot of complaints, and they're more likely to stay with us, even though there may be cost comparisons at times. The churn rate's very low. Where detractors in that customer base, that's a very volatile customer base where they'll usually follow whatever product is the least expensive in the market, and the detractors are much more likely to kind of follow that pattern. So that's how we use the survey from a numeric perspective to see who's really promoting us and who's not. Does anybody have questions just generally before I get deeper into this on the Kano model or on the Net Promoter Score or system itself?
If you do have questions, please use the chat box. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Norval. Okay, I'm going to continue on then. So once you've asked the question and you've gathered your detractors, your passives, and your promoters, you do calculate a Net Promoter Score. And that score is calculated by subtracting the percentage of detractors from the percentage of promoters. So here I've given an example where there's 100 respondents and we have 25 detractors, we have 40 passives, and we have 35 promoters, just for sake of example. 35% therefore are promoters, 25% are detractors, 35 minus 25 is 10. So this is an NPS of plus 10. You can actually get anywhere from negative 100 on the NPS scale all the way up to positive 100. A negative 100 would be if every single one of your responses is a detractor, and a positive 100 would be if every single one of your responses is a promoter. So that's the range of the scale. There's 201 possible results on that NPS scale. And really, you'll see companies and products with negative NPS scores and all the way up through positive. If you want to improve your NPS score, there's a few ways to do it. If you have detractors moving to passives, you gain, right? If you have passives move to promoters, you gain. And then the biggest win is if you get detractors all the way up to promoters, because then that's a double swing there. You're getting them all the way up. So any movement up the scale will improve your score, basically. Okay. And so usually I do a quick survey here to have people calculate themselves. I don't think we have the polling mechanism built into the page today, so I'll just go through this together. So here's some NPS survey results, and there's 200 total respondents in it. And we say what percentage are the detractors. And if you add them up, there's a total of 80 detractors. So again, that's 40%. The percentage of the promoters, those are your 9s and 10s. If you add those up, you get 60, so that's 30%. And so this is a negative 10 NPS altogether here. And so if your business has only one option for provider, can NPS be used to measure satisfaction? I think I saw most of that question come through. Yeah, you definitely could use this as your single survey if you wanted to. And this is what I'm presenting here is the recommended question format and scale to use. But there are companies that use a slightly different scale or a slightly different worded question, and that's okay as long as you're doing it consistently. The one thing I'd be careful of between satisfaction and the promoter system is that, again, if I go back a bit here, those 7s and 8s, they might be satisfied. So you could have customers who are content but aren't really promoting you actively in the market. So there is a difference in intention between measuring satisfaction and measuring promoters, with the promoters really looking at not just are you content, are you satisfied, but are you likely to really be loyal, repurchase, expand your wallet share potentially, be able to be upsold into more products from the company, and also really bring in sales from colleagues, from peers, etc. So it is a different scale than satisfaction. But yeah, if you only had one survey, if you had a 5-point Likert scale, I would probably use just a 5 as your promoter to keep it at a very highest level of satisfaction. Hopefully that answers the question that was asked there. Okay. And here, when Norval sends out the slides, you could probably expand this to see it larger. But this is just a sampling of some NPS scores across different industries. It's from last year, so there will be a new one coming out soon, actually. But the ranges don't tend to move a whole lot. And you can see really from the low and the high as well as the average. So most of these industries are kind of in that maybe 30 or so average, with actually auto dealers up here at the top at 43, which is interesting. And then TV and internet service, down here is one of the lower. Hotels coming out fairly low. Insurance carriers with the 66 here, I believe that's USAA, they come out very, very high on NPS. So if you're looking for benchmarks, best in class, this is an example just from an industry perspective. And you may have, like within LexisNexis, we'll actually do our NPS overall, but then we'll also do it at a product level where we'll look at comparative products in different pieces of our segments. There's also, and I won't go too deep into this, but there's also an NPS called transactional NPS. We're actually asking based on a specific interaction. So it's the same question really, but it's more instead of kind of measuring the relationship with the customer, it's looking at just on a specific interaction, maybe a support or a sales interaction, and saying, based on that interaction, would you recommend? So again, same idea, but a slightly different measurement there. And then lastly, there's actually employee NPS as well. A lot of companies will use the same basic concept to measure in an employee level. It says, Dale, can you do an NPS? Oh, the question popped away before I got to read the whole thing. Norval, can you read that question out?
Sure. Can you do an NPS score for a customer that provides 50% plus sales?
50%. Let me look at that question again. Oh, there it goes. I'm not sure I understand the question, actually. 50% plus sales.
Dale, could you clarify that question?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying there. Sorry. I'm probably just reading it wrong. Okay. Dale, or if anyone is able to clarify that question, I'd like to answer it. If not, Dale, I can get my content. Oh, there you go. Use methodology of a single customer. Use. Oh, okay. So the single customer. Okay, I understand. Yeah. So that's interesting. So basically, you have one customer who's your primary customer. So there's a few different ways I think about that. We have very large customers, in some cases, very large law firms, for example, that have, hundreds, if not thousands of attorneys within it. And you might survey at a user level within that customer potentially, or transactionally at each purchase they make. If it really is truly kind of a single contract, one person that you're interacting with, the question, you'd almost have to survey multiple times to be able to get to a net score. So you could survey a couple times a year potentially, but yeah, it would become much more challenging. You'd almost have to set that one user aside from the rest of your population. I think. I don't know that I would. You're not going to get really a net score from just that one. I would consider looking at users or interactions though with that one customer, and see if that helps you out. Dale, does that help at all? It's an interesting scenario to me. Okay. If I haven't answered, and you want to follow up later, we can get you my contact information through Norval. Okay. So this is a model based on NPS score, comparing it into the Kano model. And this I took just by example. I actually don't use this, but just for an example, one of the ways to look at it from a scoring perspective is if you have a kind of a 20 or more NPS, so you're above the average if you go back to that grid in most industries, you're probably at a high level of satisfaction and delivering some measure of these attractive type qualities. If you're in that middle range from -10 to +20, you probably have a lot of passives, or you have an extreme mix of detractors and promoters. So you're having different customers with extremely different experiences. And then -10 or less, there's probably some hygiene or must-have quality measures that you're actually missing. So from a scoring perspective, that's one way to think about this. Let me move on from there. And really, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but the gist of these slides is basically saying what becomes more important than the score is the feedback you capture. So when you do your NPS survey, we ask the question, and then we also allow for basically free text entry on the why question to get some feedback. Now, if you don't have any kind of text analytics engine and you're dealing with that free text response, you may want to add to your survey a couple of brief pointed questions that help you get to root causes. But really the verbatim feedback where the customer stories are is the piece I want to dig into a little bit deeper here. And so in my role, one of the things I do is I look at the verbatim feedback that comes in, or the voice of the customer data that comes in through our surveys, and I look at translating that from critical to customer, to critical to quality needs, and really into requirements for our products and for our services. So CTC is critical to customer. That's probably a concept that rings true for most people. That's what's really important to the customer. And then critical to quality is what's important to the quality of the process or the service to make sure that we deliver the thing that's important to the customer. So that really is the requirement, in other words. And just for the fun of it, I went out to Amazon and grabbed some reviews because that's a great spot to get verbatim feedback that is neutral to your own company. I just randomly, I don't know why I clicked on a box of matches as the product, but that's what I clicked on and pulled some feedback from there. And so here's some verbatim feedback. And then you could see how you can translate that into the CTC, the customer need, and then I took one of them through to maybe a customer requirement. So someone talking about, I love these, I wish they were not so expensive, is really concerned about affordability, and maybe the requirement might be I need to reduce my overhead costs to be able to deliver a lower price to the customer, as an example. So you could see kind of translating the verbatim through. Now tying that into let me take a pause here. Tying it into the Kano model here, if we think about matches in this example, you might say, what are the expected or must-have or hygiene needs? And think about, it actually lighting, having the being long enough so it doesn't burn your fingers when you light it. I don't know. What are the wants or express needs? Well, this is someone who's expressing a need for this strike anywhere capability, which would be different than kind of a standard match. And then attractive or exciting needs. Again, think about that. See how important. Oh, I missed that question too. Let's see. How important to consider features which customers don't like on a satisfaction? Yeah, that's a really good question. So almost the inverse, right? So the things that they don't like, you could call it the dissatisfiers, right? But I think what you're saying there, Surendra, is a feature to avoid in your product. That would be if it's something that you have today and you're considering removing, then that would show up as a dissatisfier in your survey. If it's something that you don't have, but you're worried might have a negative impact, you may need to do some adjacent research into, maybe another vendor or something that has that, or maybe do some customer panels or customer research to see what impact it'll have in the marketplace to see if it have a negative. But yeah, if you have a feature that people would like removed, that should come through as well as a dissatisfier. So combining it with the NPS scale, what I would suggest is that you start with your lowest scores, your detractors who give you like a 0, a 1, a 2, who go across an 11-point scale, go all the way to the bottom. If someone's giving you a 0 or a 1 or an 11-point scale, that's an extreme outlier, right? Hopefully you don't have a lot of those. If you're using a 5-point Likert scale, maybe consider using just your bottom box, maybe the bottom 2, but maybe just the bottom box. And look for themes among those. Those are going to be your must-haves. So these are the things where lack of performance on these are going to create strong dissatisfiers, typically. They might be, to Surendra's question just then, if they're services that you do have and they're complaining about them there, then it's maybe a feature to remove from your product, right? But the strong dissatisfiers. Then move up the scale, maybe the high detractors, possibly the 4s and 5s, but certainly the passives, the 6, 7s, and 8s. If you're looking at a Likert scale, I start with the 3s, possibly the 4s, but really start with the 3s. And I look for themes among those. So these are your performance needs. These are the things that will likely cause dissatisfaction if you don't have them. They will cause satisfaction if you do have them. And the better you do them, the better that feature is, the more satisfied the customers will become. And then lastly, if you're looking at features or services to add, you would look at the 9s and 10s at your promoters. Those are your customers who are most satisfied. They're not just satisfied, they're actually loyal. And they're urging others to come in and come to you, basically. They're willing to promote you to others. For a Likert scale, it's your top box responses. these are your excitement needs. These are the things to consider for future requirements to really make a difference competitively in the marketplace. So I went back to Amazon because that's my source whenever I want to get feedback statements. And actually, just a side note on that, if you are in an industry where you're selling something that is a product that's sold through something like Amazon, if you don't have your own customer survey and you want to get feedback around what customers are expecting in that sort of product, use reviews on sites like Amazon. Because if you have a similar product, you can use the customer commentary to understand what features are important to customers and which ones will delight them and so forth. So it's actually a great source of feedback in general. So here I just looked at Instant Pot because I'm considering buying one. So I looked at Instant Pot feedback, and it was interesting. The bottom box feedback, most of the bottom box feedback that was coming to the top was talking about Bluetooth functionality, which if you think about the Kano model and things becoming expected over time, if I own a crock pot, I would not expect my crock pot to have a Bluetooth app and Bluetooth functionality, but apparently that has become an expected. That probably was a significant delighter when it first came out. It's now expected, and it's expected to work well, and people don't have a lot of patience for it looks like. So that's interesting. The passive feedback, the general trend here that I saw was a lot of things around cost, and then some minor complaints. So this is someone who would probably purchase again, but they had some minor complaints basically. And then the promoter feedback were things that people were expressing lifestyle changes basically through this appliance that they purchased. And it's interesting, so I looked at the 5s here. This is not really a net promoter score, this is more of a satisfaction scale, but I looked at the tops and the 5s, and you can see where these are people who are really out there singing the praises basically, so they are promoters. So what I would do is look at this promoter feedback to understand what are the things that are really delighting those particular customers, things like having a social community that supports the product. Really delighted this customer, and look for trends in that and really maximize that. And again, we want to keep in mind that what is exciting today is expected tomorrow, and then it becomes a dissatisfier. And so you want to make sure you're reviewing that feedback regularly to stay informed on customers' evolving needs. If you survey only periodically, you just want to make sure you're surveying frequently enough to really get your hands around the needs as they evolve. So I know I've gone through that actually pretty quickly, but that is what I have for today. What other questions do you have, and what other information? I will bring up the chat window here so I can actually see those. Okay, if I'm providing IT support to an organization, should my question lean more towards their experience, confidence? Right. Yeah, so if your service or your product, quote unquote, that you're providing is actually IT support, you would ask, did the support that you provided meet their needs? Would they recommend, if you asked it as a recommend question, would they recommend the support you provided to others? You could ask underlying questions specifically on speed to resolve. That wouldn't necessarily be the NPS question, but that would be a question I would put in the survey as a secondary question. Our support survey asks the NPS question. So based on that support interaction that you had, how likely are you to recommend this service? And then we additionally ask whether we resolved it on first contact. And then we have a third question about kind of customer effort, actually, where we say, to what degree do you agree with the statement, LexisNexis made it easy to resolve my issue? And we ask that on a 5-point scale. So that's called customer effort score, which is one you might want to consider from an IT perspective, because even if you resolve the issue, maybe it was challenging for the customer to get the resolution to that issue. So second question, we send out 1,000 surveys and 100 are returned. Yeah, so that's interesting. So 100 out of 1,000, that's actually, from what I've seen is, and I don't know if others have had different experiences, but that's actually a decent return rate. compared to what I've seen. The return surveys is definitely where you would focus primarily. You need to do your root cause analysis to identify what's critical to customers and so forth. But the other 900 that customers that didn't return, if you're looking for more interaction with them, you might want to consider other ways to get more feedback. One thing I would say if you're surveying your customers is be careful with incentives. And what I mean by that is you don't want to offer the incentives that sway the way customers respond to your surveys and that create kind of a false picture because you really want honest feedback. So make sure you keep your incentives relatively small, actually, and evenly applied. And then one thing you want to be careful of is the delivery of your survey mechanism. You don't want to do things like, for instance, I'll think about car dealerships again. If you go and buy a car, it's not uncommon, at least I've experienced it quite a few times, where the salesperson will actually say to you, you're going to get a survey after this, and my pay is part of that, so please make sure you fill it out, that kind of thing. Those kinds of interactions actually sway the way people respond to the surveys and affect the validity sometimes of the survey response. So you want to make sure it's sent out in a neutral way that isn't incenting towards any particular response, if that makes sense. Thomas, if that didn't answer the question, let me know. Other questions? Thank you.
Yeah, we do have extra time today, it looks like, to take whatever questions folks might have. So take advantage of the extra time.
Yeah, I apparently talked fast.
That's quite okay. I'm hearing a bit of an echo, in fact.
Have you been hearing the echo throughout? Well, I guess it's too late now if you have been. Apologies if you've been hearing echo.
I don't think I hear it now. Okay. Oh, no, I do hear it a little bit. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, last call. Any other questions? Nope.
Yeah. Now, one thing, too, to note while we're waiting for questions, we do have, Henderson Thomas is writing you one, so you should have another one coming from him.
Sure.
But while we're waiting for that, the two webinars that are scheduled in December both have Eventbrite schedule or set up to take registration. So if you're interested in either one of those topics or both, go ahead and register. It is open now. Looks like a question just showed up.
Yeah, so Caleb, tips using NPS for employees versus customers. We use it for both, and I really like using it for both. But also for employees, we ask an underlying satisfaction question or set of questions as well. So for employees, the way our NPS works is we say, basically based on your employment experience, would you recommend this as a place to work? So would you recommend it to other potential future employees? That's the way we pose the NPS question. And then underneath, within that same survey, it's an annual survey for us. And underneath that, we ask questions around, are you satisfied with your direct manager, the leadership at a higher level, the benefits, a series of different things that we might find are actionable. And we ask satisfaction questions underneath that. So we do combine those. But the NPS question, again, is rooted in whether you would recommend the company as an employer in that case. Okay. And let's see, Mr. Thomas, back to a single service provider. Okay, I work for the state, the agencies. Yeah, so that's an interesting question. We're a little bit similar to you in our state and local government and our federal government space, where we have customers who are government agencies, and it is challenging to survey government agencies. We have some restrictions around that we've run into, where not every agency will actually allow you to do interviews or to do surveys within those groups. Usually we can survey a single point of contact within the agency. So in that case, for instance, I think about maybe the Department of Justice might be a a high level customer, and then within that there's a lot of different agencies, right? And so if we can survey a single contact within each of those agencies within that larger customer, then we would use those to produce a net promoter score. But you are an interesting scenario if you have a lot of government customers, because there are, like I said, there's a lot of restrictions around who and how much you can survey them, unfortunately.
Okay, any further questions? We'll pause here momentarily and let you have an opportunity to type if you are sending a question. Okay, there is a question that came to me directly.
Okay.
The question is, it's not clear to me how I can access the presentation once it is done, meaning at what website should I go to download or access the presentation after the call? Or should we just shoot you an email and you send it individually? What I'll do afterwards, as I try to do each time, is I will do a follow-up email in which there will be a link that is sent to everyone who was online today asking for feedback. And there will also be a link to where the recording is posted to our YouTube channel. And because I also have Therese's slides from today and her permission to share them with you, I will also include those as an email attachment. So you will be getting all of that information in one nice, hopefully succinct email. So I appreciate the question.
Great. Thanks, Norval.
Let's see. Any other questions related to Therese's talk today? Okay. Did you see the one from Alejandro?
Oh, okay. The company has different contact channels and NPS is measured. That's a good question. So from an NPS perspective, I wouldn't change the target that you would have or the objective that you'd have for NPS itself, but there's probably other underlying metrics that you may want to consider different targets for. So for instance, things like turnaround time or response time, something like a voice interaction is a real-time service where you're on there immediately, and so the answer time might be 20 seconds to answer the phone, 30 seconds to answer the phone, something like that. Whereas like an email may have a longer lead time to respond to. Although it would be careful because a few years back or a number of years ago, it would have been normal to wait maybe a couple days for an email. And nowadays, people don't have a lot of patience with that either, that they want a pretty quick response, even if it is via email. But I would say those different channels, email, chat, and voice, the biggest difference I've seen from a metrics perspective has to do with how quickly you get the response or the answer out to them. I would also make sure that you're measuring, at least from my perspective, measuring customer effort on each of those channels to understand what's kind of the preferred channel for getting the easiest response to customers, if that makes sense. And you get return surveys from yeah. So from dissatisfied customers, what we do is we have a closed loop program where we reach back out to them to try to understand if they're willing to take a call or an email from us, to understand more about why they're dissatisfied and to resolve any issues if possible. That does not affect the measurement at that time of NPS, but then when we resurvey them, assuming they continue to be a customer of us, we have kind of a subscription model basically where we resurvey roughly every 6 months. And so what we do is we see those dissatisfied customers turning into passives or promoters over time because we're closing the loop with them. So hopefully that answers both of those questions.
Okay. Looks like we're about 15 minutes away from the top of the hour. Great question, folks. Glad you were able to have time and we weren't pushing up against the top of the hour like we have the last few times. we're going to give like another minute or two for extra questions. If anybody has one, we'll probably take one more. While we're waiting, I'll go ahead and remind everybody that the next webinar after today is next Tuesday, December the 4th. The Innovative Leader, Project Management Techniques to Enable Teams to Achieve Successful Outcomes with Laura Jensen of the Green Bank Observatory in West Virginia. And we've had Laura present for us twice before in the past, so this will be her third opportunity. So looking forward to that next week. Oh, and looks like there is one more question.
Sure. And actually, I can share my email with the individuals here who have a couple more questions. Norval, if feel free to share my email with people too.
Sure.
Because it looks like a few people have quite a few questions. Do organizations receive more good or bad? Yeah, so if you go back to the, let me go back a minute here. Oops. Sorry, to the average here. So if you look across in your industries, really, if you look at it, most people are kind of the average across most of these industries is coming out in that 30-40 range, which means they are coming on the positive end. So there's more positive surveys than there are negative surveys overall. But really, it's an interesting question. You'd have a negative NPS if you had more bad, and you actually could have a positive NPS if you had a lot of neutrals in there as well. But so in general, more positive than negative. But the bad surveys or the negative responses are where you get a lot of actionable feedback to actually improve your service or improve your products. So I actually value the negative feedback really highly, if that makes sense. I don't know if that quite answers the question, but don't be too dismayed if you do get a lot of negative feedback, because that means you have a lot of opportunity for improvement, which can grow your revenue in the future. I must be wearing a positive. It's around the holidays. I'm wearing a positive hat today.
All right. Looks like we're going to call it the last question. In the email that I used to follow up to today's talk, I will include Therese's email address, if that's okay with you, Therese.
Yep, that'll work.
Okay. And that way, if somebody goes back and reviews the recording and or the slides and has further questions, they can follow up with you directly.
That's fine.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. We'd like to thank Therese once again for presenting for us today. Thanks, Therese.
You're welcome.
And I'd like to also thank everyone else for joining us, and we hope to see many of you hopefully next week on Tuesday, 12 noon Eastern time. And until then, take care, and we'll hopefully see you online soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Norval.